Namaste. Welcome to the Hindu Parenting Podcast. In today's episode, we address an integral part of the Hindu experience, the temple visit. For modern parents, it's important to pass on a sense of the sacred to the next generation. It is equally important that we get a big picture and learn about the stories that temples tell. Our main focus is on making the temple experience interesting and enriching for children. To help us understand and demystify the process, we have Shri Ramakrishna Kongalla, a researcher on temples and the assistant professor at the Indian Institute of Tourism and Travel Management. Namaskaram, Ramakrishna Garu. We're very much looking forward to learning about temples today.
Namaskaram Andi. Namaskaram Rekha Garu, Shalini Garu.
So let's start with, what is a temple? Is the word temple right? If not, what is the right word for a temple?
The word temple is not native to India. We have adopted it from the Western culture. The word temple comes from Latin, and we are very well aware of the concept of temple 1, temple 2, temple 3 from the Western societies. But when it comes to India, we have a different terminology for temple. And instead of temple, using the Indian terminology like Devalaya, Devalayam, Devasthanam, Devashilagriha, Yakshasadam, Ruksha Chaitya. These are the different words that were used by Indians in different periods of different times. So instead of temple, the word Devalayam is very close to what it means. Deva is the god, and Alayam is where he resides. Or Devasthanam also. Deva is the god and Sthanam is the place where he resides. Now, if you look into the word literal meaning and its origin, we have its origin in Rigveda, wherein in third mandala of Rigveda, we have Agni Suktam. In that Agni Suktam, there is a word Yakshasadam. In that Agni Suktam, the first line goes like Ma kasya Yakshasadam idduro gama veshasya praminato mape. The beauty is, here they say, O Agni, do not go to Yakshasadam, where violence is committed. In a sense, now they are referring to a place called Yakshasadam. We are all very much aware about the Yaksha. In olden days, the gods were referred to as Yakshas, and Sadam is obviously the place or home. So Yakshasadam, they are meaning that the place of God. And slowly the same Yakshasadam gets transformed into a word called as Agnidreya or Agnidra. This is the place or a shed where Agni is kept. And this is very, very much mentioned in Shatapatha Brahmana, the third Brahmana of Shatapatha Brahmana. And then if you go ahead slowly, by the time of Chanakya in Ardhashastra, the same Agnidriya or Agnidra becomes Agnisthanam. And Agnisthanam slowly converts into the word Devashilagriha or Devasthanam. So Yakshasadam, Agnidriya, Agnisthanam, and slowly into Devasthanam. So Devalaya or Devasthanam are more close to Indian culture and Indian representation, what they mean. And a temple is simply a place of prayer. It can be anywhere, it can be constructed anyhow. You do not have so much Shastra and logic into it.
Is the word Kshetra also correct? Because I am a Malayali and coming from Kerala, temples in Kerala are called Kshetras.
Yes.
Not Devalaya, not Devasthanam. So is Kshetra also correct?
A Kshetra is a bigger word than the Devasthanam or Devalayam. So it covers all the flora and fauna that is there in the region also. It covers the lakes, ponds, mountains, and the people also.
Okay. Kshetram.
Yes.
All our temples are called Kshetram. So
Kshetrams,
it is.
yes, Kshetrams. Because, ma'am, I'll tell you, in Brihat Samhita, it is I think chapter 56, they beautifully say that gods love to live in the places where there are mountains, lakes, forests, etc., rivers, water bodies.
Okay.
So wherever there are mountains, lakes, and ponds, if there a god is established, that whole region is called as kshetra.
Okay. This partly answers one question that we had, for you later. We were to ask you, is there some procedure to determine where a temple should be located? No? So
Yes,
how is the place decided? So
yeah,
this is one part of the
this,
answer, I suppose.
yes.
Are there any other criteria for situating a temple?
Yes, ma'am. There is a lot of in-depth criteria. For example, since we have got into the discussion, let me tell you, like we have good shastras talking about how to identify place for a temple. So the first important thing we have to do is we have to identify a suitable ground. And in Indian shastras, the ground, based on the type of soil, the ground is divided into 4 categories, like Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, and Shudra. So the best soil, which is very suitable for establishing a temple, which is very strong, devoid of moisture, that is called as Brahmana. And a very swampy ground with lot of moisture is called as Shudra. So the Brahmana type of soil is selected, and there the temple is established. And establishment of temple is also related to the village also. For example, let us say if we are establishing a Shantamurti like Vishnu, so it should always be in the center of the village or looking towards the village. But if we are establishing a Ugramurti like Narasimha Swami or like Chamundi, then what we have to do is we have to establish temple out of the village, and it should always look away from the village.
Okay.
I see.
So, and then again, the direction of the temple also. For example, if it is east or west, north and south, every god has got their own specific direction. But basically, it is accepted that since ancient times, when we are doing yagya or when we are doing havan, we always face east, because east is the direction of sunrise. Or it is also said very clearly, like Taittiriya Samhita says, east is the direction of the gods. East is also the direction of Devaraja Indra. And that is the reason east is considered auspicious. And the temples generally, if they don't have any rule or any shastra, they can directly face the east.
Okay. So which means the Vigraha will face the east, no? You'll be doing the puja towards the west, but the Vigraha will be facing east, right?
Yeah, Vigraha will be facing the east. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, from what you said, I'm thinking there's another important point that not many people think about, but this difference is essential for us to know. So a Devalayam is the place where the devas or the gods reside, whereas in other religions, this word temple itself comes from the Western point of view. And so that is just like a prayer hall, isn't it? So that is the key difference. And that is why terminology matters for us, so that we know.
Yes, definitely. That is true. Temple is the important point. It means important point. For example, wherever you are standing and you feel that that is the place of God, that becomes important place and you can worship there. But then when it comes to us or Indian culture, a temple it do not stand alone just with the concept of God. It is related to the cosmology. It is related to the place. It is related to the village or welfare of the village. It is related to the natural resources available. It is related to the material available to construct the temple. It is related to the kshetrapalas. All these, all the things are looked into, and a temple is established.
So, we go to them. I mean, I think from here onwards, we should start using the word Devalayam, because we are saying temple is not the right word for us.
No, that is fine, because see, we have terms like Hindu, we have terms like temple, and they are much acceptable. And whenever people listens to, they easily gets connected. So the word like temple, Dravida, Hindu, etc., because they are widely accepted, even though they are in wrong connotation, we can happily use them, not an issue.
Okay, but maybe we can always enhance them by saying temple or Devalaya, so that
Devalaya,
that also
yes,
starts
exactly.
gaining currency, and slowly we can move to using our terms for our our heritage, basically. So what I wanted to ask is that we go to temples quite often, and I think today most of us don't really understand or appreciate why we are going, what we are doing there. We just do it as a sort of something that has been told to us or carried down from generation to generation. We are unable to answer kids in a in a coherent manner if they ask some questions. So maybe we can just describe what essentially are the constituent parts of a Devalaya, and what do they represent, basically. If you can elaborate a little bit on that, that'll be good, it'll be good for all our listeners also, and us, in fact. So
Yes, ma'am. So the first important thing we have to understand here is what is the real meaning of the Devalayam or the temple. Now we have to understand that concept. Then later we will understand the components of the temple or Devalayam very clearly. So what does a Devalayam or Devasthanam means? Like I said, in olden days, the word Agnisthanam was used to refer a yagya, or a place where Havan is done, and over that a shed was constructed. And from the same concept, the temple comes. In the sense, a temple is a place or a shelter, and there a god is kept. Now, here slowly from Yagya, let me first of all make this point very clear. We have to understand the concept of Yagya or Havan or the Homam. Why is it very important? Because in due course of time, earlier yagya was performed by most of the people. In due course of time, okay, due to invasions and all that, the practice of yagya has lost its relevance. And today, most of us, 80 to 90% of us, are not familiar with yagya or homam or havan, and that is the reason we fail to appreciate the meaning of temple. Why? Because the temple is the direct representation or a direct interpretation of what actually yagya or havan is. I will validate this point how it is. For example, when we built a temple, or the Shastras like Brihat Samhita, they clearly say that the square base or the square platform for a temple or a Garbhagriha is the best size or best shape to be constructed. In the sense, whenever you lay the foundation of a temple, it is always laid on square this structure. And where does this square comes from? This square comes from the yagya or havan. In a sense, the havan is constructed in the form of a square. Now people will be, why is yagya constructed in the form of a square? Because when you draw the square, and if you are drawing a circle in the center of it, that circle or round shape is earth. And it is having four corners. In the sense, it is there in the Shastras clearly mentioned that the earth is held at 4 points, the four cardinal points. So the four cardinal points make the earth into square. And that is the reason the yagya is constructed in the form of a square, and that too with the bricks and made of the mud. In the sense, the soil is used there, and you never use, even though you are very rich, you never use metal, you never use gold, silver, stone, only soil is used. In the sense that yagya or Yagyavedi is the representation of the earth. And then in that, when you are putting the fire is the god, or the what do you say, the link towards the god. Now, these two concepts exactly replicate in the temple. The base of the temple is also in square form. And over the square, what you do is, in the center of the square, again, there is a logic also. This is called as Vastu Mandala. So this square is exactly divided into 64 squares. And in the 64 squares, the one that is there in the center is called as Brahmasthana. And in that Brahmasthana, what you do is you establish the god or the Mula Virat. And over this, what do? You construct a whole temple. Now,
Okay.
it must be very clear that the base of the temple and the Yagyavedi both are same. There is no difference. In the sense, the temple is the representation of the ancient tradition called as Yagyavedi. That is the first thing. Next important thing is, now that is Vedic aspect. Now coming to Upanishadic aspect. Now Upanishads very clearly says that we are all Pragnanam Brahma. In the sense, consciousness is Brahma, and what is consciousness? And we are Atman, how Adi Shankaracharya says, we are made of Atman. Atman is the God. Atman is the Parabrahma. So everything. So once this Yagyavedi becomes the base for the temple and temple is constructed, later rest many elements like different murtis are constructed around the temple, periphery of the temple. A Mandapa is constructed, a Shikhara is constructed, all these are constructed. Now, what are all these elements of the temple? These elements basically says, there is a verse in Sanskrit which says, Deho Devalayam. Deho Devalaya, in the sense, the body itself is the temple. Now here, like Upanishadic concept or Advaita concept, wherein it says, body is the temple and the soul, Atman, that is there in this body is the God who is there inside the temple. Now the temple is exactly representation of human body. And you may be asking, how is it exactly the representation of human body? It is representation of the human body because all the elements or components that are there in the temple are named after human body only. I will give you the best example. The base of the temple, just above the base, the outer visible element is called as pada. And above just pada, you have janga. Janga, in the sense, in Sanskrit, we call it as thighs. And above thighs, you have kati. Kati, in the sense, the waist part. And above waist, then you have skanda. And then above skanda in the sense shoulders. And above shoulders, you have griva, the neck part. And above the neck, then you have amalaka, which is the head portion. And above the amalaka, then you have a kumbha or a kalesha, which is the tuft, the hair tuft or shika of the human. And since look at the terminology that is used: pada, janga, kati, skanda, griva, shikha, amalaka. So all such words are used, and they are verily the names of the human body parts. So this is the physical representation of the body. Then who is the soul, the Atma? The Atma is the God who is established in the Garbhagriha. So the temple is the concept that directly arises from the Vedic Yagya, and then the Atman, a concept of Upanishad. So it is both the Vedic concept also and Upanishadic concept also. But because we have lost the tradition of understanding or doing the Yagya, Havan or Homam, etc., now we do not have that clear understanding. We look at a temple as just simply the place of God and nothing else.
But I was also thinking, maybe going back to the history lessons that we learned in school, we were also taught, when we said the constituent parts of a temple, there would be gopuram, then there would be what was the next thing? I think the
Vimanam,
Vimanam, and then the dancing hall, that part, and then lastly the Garbhagriha. So that is our knowledge of the constituent parts of a temple. Basically.
That you see in the book is true, ma'am. There is no problem in it. The problem is we are talking about temple in advanced manner without understanding the basic elements, basic concept of what the temple is.
Yeah.
In South India, in southern part of India, if you look at the temples, they have a compound which is called as prakaram. And the prakaram will be having the entrances from the 4 sides, entrances from the 3 sides, 2 side or 1 side. But the official entrances to that prakaram are called as gopurams. And once you enter, you have to enter into the temple, you enter through the gopuram. And inside the gopuram, once you get into the temple prakaram, now you have a lot of elements. As soon as you cross the gopuram, you may find Balipitam. Immediately after Balipitam, you will find Dhwajasthambam. After Dhvajasthambam, you find a Mukha Mandapam, or you find a Vahana Mandapam. After Vahana Mandapam, you find Maha Mandapam or Ranga Mandapam. And then after that, you will find Garbhagriha. So this is the order of the elements in South India. So roughly more or same, these are the same elements that are there in North India also, but the difference between North Indian temple and South Indian temple is North Indian temple in the sense Nagara temple, and South Indian temple is a Dravida temple. And we should not have any problem for using the word Dravida here. Why? Because we have a Shastra, Kamikagama. So Kamikagama, very frequently in many places, it uses the word called as Dravida. So it is not a racial term that we are using here. So Dravida temples have got these elements that I have said. Whereas the North Indian or Nagara temples, and not just North Indian, the Nagara temples are there towards the east, towards the west also, and towards the north and central India. So except the South Dravidian temples, rest of the whole of India, they have Nagara temples. And Kamikagama, though it is a South Indian text, it is very categorically, it says that Nagara temples are the best form of temples. But that doesn't mean that Dravida are not. Maybe because the Nagara temples are widely spread across the country. Even in South India, they are available. For example, if you go to Karnataka, there are these Nagara temples, North Indian style of temple constructed, which are called as Rekha Nagara temples. For example, if you go to Pattadakal, UNESCO World Heritage Site, in Pattadakal, you also find a North Indian temple style, Nagara temples, and also Dravida style of temples. So this is so in North Indian temples, what is the difference is we will not find Gopuram, the official entrances to the temples, and the Shikhara, which is the terminology for a temple tower in the North India, is called as Vimanam in the South India. And maybe because of due to invasions, because we have enough evidence of having the Dhvajasthambas even in the northern temples also, Nagara temples also. But what has happened is in due course of time, maybe because of invasions, they do not wanted to highlight that there exists a temple here. So to avoid the invasions, these people have stopped the practice of using Dhvajasthambam. So we do not find Dhvajasthamba, Balipita, and Vahana Mandapa in the North Indian temples. We have Vahana Mandapas, no doubt, but not as prominently as they are constructed in the South Indian or Dravida temples.
Yeah, when you say Vahana Mandapa, that is yes, for housing the Vahanam of the deity, is it?
Chief deity, yes. For example, if it is a Shiva, we have Nandi Mandapa.
Nandi.
And if it is Vishnu, we have Garuda Mandapa.
Okay.
And then there is also science behind these mandapas also. For example, if it is Nandi Mandapa is always open. It is not closed from three sides. But if it is Garuda Mandapa is always open, closed from all the sides. And what does it say? Look at the logic that our ancestors have kept in mind. A bull is a bull which keeps moving a lot. So keeping the psychology or morphology of the bull, they have always kept the Vahana Mandapa open from all the sides, the Nandi Mandapa. But whereas Garuda is a bird which always restricts itself to a very small nest. So they covers the Garuda Mandapa from all the sides except the entrance. So this much in detail our ancestors have thought about while constructing a temple.
You mentioned the Dhwajasthambam. So what is the purpose of having a Dhwajasthambam in a temple?
Yeah, Dhwajasthambam, we have a beautiful story related to it. I'll just very quickly run through the story. In Mahabharata, in Ashwamedha Parva, we have a story of a great king called as Mayura Dvaja. So how does that story go? The story goes like this. After the Mahabharata war, now it is time for Yudishtra or the Pandavas to do Ashwamedha Yaga. Now, by this time after the war, Yudishthira will have a lot of ego and attitude that I have won the war. Now I am the Chakravartin of the world. So I can control as much as the world I can do. But then Sri Krishna, watching all this, he will think that I should teach Yudishthira a lesson. So let me plan it. So once Ashwamedha Yaga starts and they will be leaving the Ashwamedha Ashwa, and all the Pandavas will be going along with the Ashwa, taking it for the Yagam. And then once they reach this Manipur kingdom, okay, the Manipura kingdom was the name of the Mayurudhwaja's kingdom. So Mayurudhwaja, basically, the king, he was already a devotee of Krishna. And Krishna wanted to teach a lesson to Yudishtra through Mayurudhwaja, the king. Now, once the Ashwamedha, okay, Ashwa or Yaga Ashwa has reached the Manipura kingdom, so Mayurudhwaja do not wanted to accept the suzerainty of Yudhishthir. He wanted to fight. Why? Because it is not the quality, the gun of a Kshatriya to just give up like that. He wanted to fight, and then he wanted to lose, or he wanted to, but he wanted to try it. So when Mayurudhwaja gets hold of the Ashwa, so he has to fight with Pandavas. He had a great son also, whose name was Tamradhwaja. So Mayurudhwaja and Tamradhwaja, they fight and defeat all the Pandavas, and they will get hold of everybody. Now the news reaches Yudhishthir, and everybody is defeated. Now what to do? The Yudhishthir will say, I will go. The Krishna says, yes, we will go, but we will do one thing. We will just change our attire. We will disguise ourselves, and we will reach, and we will just talk to Mayurudhwaja. So Krishna and Yudhishthir, they will come in disguise to Mayurudhwaja. As soon as Mayurudhwaja sees them as Brahmanas, he wanted to do upacharas, like Shodapacharas, like we do, 16 upacharas. But then the Brahmana says, like, before doing the upacharas, we have a problem. While we were coming to your kingdom, we had to go through a forest, and in the forest, one of our kid is caught by a lion. So we want to get our kid free from the lion, but the condition is we have to offer the meat equal to the boy, and then only we can get. Then the Mayurudhwaja said, what can I do? I'll give you the meat. The Krishna says, it has to be only your meat. The Mayurudhwaja accepts and says, okay, fine, I'll give my meat. The Krishna says, again, another condition. You has to be cut into 2 pieces only by your wife and children. Mayurudhwaja says, yes, why not? So the wife and children, they cut Mayurudhwaja into 2 pieces, and they will try to give the meat to the Krishna. Now, Yudhishthir notices something, like Mayurudhwaja's, the left part that is left, the tears, there will be tears in the eyes of the left part. Yudhishthir says, you are not happy giving the donation. We will not accept this, because it has to be given with a lot of heart's content. Mayurudhwaja says, it's not that I am sad for giving my body. It is that you have taken half part and you will give it to the lion and you will save the boy. But what about my rest half? It is useless. It is of not any use. So Yudhishthir gets stunned by the answer. See, he is not worried about his death, but he is worried about the rest of half of his body, of which is going of no use. And then Yudhishthir understands the trick, or the message that Krishna wanted to give. And here, at this point, Yudhishthir loses all his ego, attitude, and he will become very humble. And Krishna turns toward Mayurudhwaja and he says, Mayurudhwaja, you have done a great act. And from now onwards, whichever god is worshipped, they will first worship to you and then to the god. In the sense, Mayurudhwaja, in the name of you, there will be always a pillar in the temple, and they will come to you. Like Yudhishthir has forgone his ego and attitude, the same way when people come to you at your place, they will remember you, and they will forget all their ego, attitude, and they will come, or they will get into the temple for worshipping the god. Then only their prayers are answered. So Mayurudhwaja has become the Dhwajasthambam in the temple. And Dhwajasthambam is a place where we have to keep all our ego aside and get into the temple. So this is a beautiful story from Ashwamedha Parva of Mahabharata.
Wow,
So
absolutely beautiful. I never knew. I never knew. I don't think we knew this. It's amazing story. Amazing. Yeah.
It's so beautiful story. And simply, whenever we get into the temple or get to the temple, because the beauty is our ancestors, they wanted us to idolize the great kings like Mayurudhwaja. And they have added an element to the temple in the name of Mayurudhwaja. So whenever you look at that Dhwajasthamba, we have to remember the greatness of Mayurudhwaja and behave like Mayurudhwaja.
Yeah.
So So directly or indirectly, this is like bringing a kind of what do you say, a culture, a tradition, or a right dharma. Instead of all these words, we can use bringing dharma into the society. They have done all this.
So, Ramakrishna Garu, this was a beautiful exposition on the reason for having Dhwajasthambam in all our temples. That brings me to a question asked by a listener. She is a 16-year-old girl who is very interested in knowing about temples. And she has mentioned something very similar in the sense that she says that she would like to understand, get some tips and tricks to understand at least a little of the meanings carved on the walls of our great temples. And I think this was a great beginning because it brought us to stories that temples tell. The very fact that when you enter, the Dhwajasthambam is a reminder for us to surrender the ego there and then enter the temple. So this is so symbolic, and it is part of the stories that temples tell. So I think in some way it already starts to answer her question. But let's also talk about the meanings of the temple carvings. We notice a lot of carvings on the temple. So how do we understand that?
Yes. So first of all, let me put it in a different perspective. The temple has got, or a temple study can be divided into two aspects. The first aspect is the physical structure of a temple, which is like we call in general English terminology as architecture, or in Indian terminology we call it as sthapatya shastra. We have a separate in detailed shastra about the architecture or construction of the temples. And then the second part is the sculpture of the temple. So in architecture, we only talk about the geometry, the shape, the size, etc., but not about the sculpture. The second element is the sculpture. So 50% is architecture and 50% is a sculpture. So the architecture part is little easy. Like I said, in Dravidian temple or Nagara temple, we have Amalaka, Shikhara, Vimanam, Gopuram, etc. These are the terminologies that we come across. And then they have, again, they also have their own explanation and interpretation, no doubt. But then the important main part is like the sculpture of the temple. Because where does it become difficult for a person is the sculpture. Why? Because you have different sculptures. The exterior of the temple has different sculpture. The interior of the temple has different sculpture. The circumambulation or the pradakshina pada of the temple has got a different sculpture. The door frame has got different sculpture. The shikhara on the top, there is different sculpture, or the murtis. On the gopuram, there are different sculptures. So from place to place, not less than, at least generally when we talk about, not less than 300, 400, 500 different sculptures on a simple temple are visible. So this becomes complex to the people. Now, how do we study, or how do we make the things very visible? I'll try to explain. So when I started a temple study, I started with English books. Well, there are people, very good writers like Percy Brown, James Ferguson. So all these people, they have done good job on Indian, especially the architecture, covering Buddhist architecture, Jain architecture, Hindu architecture, Islamic colonial architecture, etc. But then what I found the problem there was, there were all English terminologies. And then in here and there, they use Indian terminologies. Then I got a question. There must be terminologies for every element these people are talking about in Indian sense. So what is their meaning? And what do they mean? So I started looking for the text, and through their own textbooks, I started getting references to Indian texts. So the first book that I read was Brihat Samhita. Then I read another textbook which is called as Manasara Shilpa Shastra. From South India, especially from Kerala region, we have a great textbook called as Maya Matham. And then there is a book called Ishana Gurudeva Paddhati, Kamikagama, Aparajita Prucha, Vishwakarma Prakasha, Shilpa Prakasha, Shilpa Ratna Kosha. So these are all beautiful books that they talk about the temples, elements of temples, how, which their side they should face, which direction, to which god, how a temple has to be, how many doors have to be, what are the elements that are to be carved on the door of a temple. So, and how many floors or stories a temple has to be, how many stories a gopuram has to have, because you must have observed gopuram will always have an odd number of stories in it. Either there will be 3, 5, 7, 9, 11 stories, not the even number of stories. And even above the gopuram, the number of kalashas that are there, they are also odd numbered, like 3, 5, 7, 9, 11. So maximum 11 the number they reach. So all these has got some explanation in these texts. So I started reading them. But then I understood the physicality of the temple, that is the architecture and the terminologies and what do they mean. And then next comes to the sculpture. Now sculpture, as soon as you enter the temple, we have Balipitam and then Vahana Mandapam. Now, to understand Vahana Mandapa, why there is Nandi, why there is Garuda, then we have to understand the nature of the god who inside the Garbhagriha is. Now, when you have to understand the Garbhagriha, the chief deity inside the Garbhagriha, then we have to know the family members of the chief deity. Why? Because in and around all the elements that are there, the sculpture that is there is related to the chief deity or Mura Virat, who is inside the Garbhagriha. And then all these temples, for example, if it is Shiva, then you find Kartikeya, Ganesha, Ambika, okay, and then Vishnu, Brahma, and Aditya. Surya will be there in every temple, irrespective of to whom they belong. And if it is a Vishnu temple, you find the temple for Lakshmi, then you find also the small temple for Vishwaksena, Jaya, Vijaya. So all these people, they will be. So these are all called Parivara Devatas, and they have their sculpture. And in different places, like in the Pradakshina Patha, you have got all Ashtadikpalas, the 8 guardian deities of the 8 directions. And then we have Navagrahas in the door frame. And then we have Ekadasha Rudras. Then so all such kind of Saptamatrikas are there. So there are different elements, and all these are carved in the temple. And sometimes the important aspect now comes here is, other than all these Navagrahas, Ashtadikpalas, Saptamatrikas, Dashavataras, and then the episodes related to the chief deity. For example, it is Shiva temple, you find Lingodbhava Murti outside the walls of the Garbhagriha. If it's a Vishnu, then you will find Gajendra Moksham episode outside the temple walls, etc. So episodes related to the god who is there in the temple. Along with that, you will also find many episodes which are from Ramayana and Mahabharata also. Why? To infuse dharma into the society, to tell the people, and all these episodes that are there outside the temple, they are like always the good winning over the evil. For example, in Gajendra Moksham, how the bhakti is winning. And for example, if Andhakasura, if you take Shiva temple, there is the killing of Andhakasura on the outer walls of Shiva temples. Now the good winning over the evil. So everywhere Mahishasura Mardini, the good winning over the evil. So in everywhere, wherever you come across, you will be seeing some Rakshasa or some Asura is being killed by the god. So to tell or give confidence to the people, look, at one point of the time, the evil has to be defeated by the goodness. And such kind of sculpture. So now coming to the final point, how do you understand all these elements in an easy manner? So either North India or South India, East India, West India, there are 2 temples, okay, or 3 kinds of temples that you maximum see. Either it will be a Shiva temple, Vishnu temple, or the forms of Shiva, the forms of Vishnu, or Shakti related temples. So these are the 3 kinds of temples. Shakti related temples are mostly found towards the eastern part of the country. Otherwise, Shiva and Vishnu temples are frequently visible. And on the temple walls, other than the Shiva episodes and Vishnu episodes, you will be finding Ramayana and Mahabharata. So the 4 textbooks that we have to read to understand the temples in a best manner. One is Shiva Puranam, the other one is Vishnu Puranam, the third one is Ramayana, and the 4th one is Mahabharata. If we can know the episodes from all these 4 texts, Shiva Puranam, Vishnu Puranam, Ramayana, and Mahabharata, you can easily understand every temple in a most simplified manner, and you don't need to worry who is related to what and what episode does it talk about. So it is that easy. So the 4 texts that I have stated, we have to refer. then it is very easy.
That's a great answer for Meghna. And it also partly answers the question sent in by a 12-year-old boy, Akul, about why some of the figures on the outside look like demons and why do we depict them in our temples. I guess it's part of the story, just to answer him briefly.
See, the part of the story, I'll say, the demons that he is talking about is Kirtimukhas. So, for example, especially in South, even in the North Indian and South Indian temples, both the temples, we have a lot of Kirtimukhas. Like, what are these Kirtimukhas? In the South Indian temples, especially on the Gopurams, on the both side of the sides of the Gopuram, you will find a very ferocious, very big toothed, a kind of demon shape or face, because we do not know the name of that element. We call it as a Rakshasa, we call it as a Drishti, we call it with different other names, but the original name of that element is called as Kirtimukha. Now, what is this Kirtimukha? Now, people will be surprised, because the listeners also will find it very fascinating, and they will also realize today how wrongly they have been worshipping the gods in the temples till now. So now, what is the story behind this Kirtimukha? In a very short manner, I will quickly run through the story. So there was this Rakshasa called as Jalandhara. And Jalandhara was very much fascinated by the beauty of the goddess Parvati. And then he says, because I am the powerful man, I got the boons from all the gods. Now nobody can kill me. Now I want Parvati as my wife. So rest of all his attendants, they will say, what are you talking about? You are asking somebody who is mother of this universe and who is also the wife of Shiva, Mahadev. And if he gets to know that you are thinking in such manner, he will finish you in no time. So he will say, no, not an issue. I have the boon. Okay. I have the blessings of Brahma and I have the blessings of Vishnu. So nobody can do anything to me and I will go ahead. So he goes and he stands before Shiva and he asks for Parvati. So Shiva gets very angry, and out of his anger bonds or emerges a ferocious lion. And he advises lion to go and finish Jalandhara. But then by the time Jalandhara understands that he is of no power before that ferocious lion, he concedes and he says, I'm sorry, I have realized my mistake, and she is my mother. I am accepting as mother. Please accept me as your child. So I will not do that. So Shiva forgives, because he is a Bola Shankara. So he forgives and he says, okay, that is fine. It is accepted. Okay, you can go happily, not an issue. But then the ferocious lion that is seeing all these episodes, she asks Shiva, now you have created me for the purpose of eating Jalandhara or killing Jalandhara. Now what should I do? Shiva, in a light mood, he says, you eat yourself. So the lion starts eating itself right from the tail. It keeps consuming itself. And it consumes almost everything, only the face is left. Immediately Shiva realizes his mistake and said, hey, look, wait, what have you done? Well, you said, you are my boss, you have created me, and you said to eat myself, and I have done it. Then Shiva gets impressed by this action. He says, I just said you in a very light mood and you did it. Well, you are the symbol of loyalty. You are the symbol of submission. I just said and you did it. Well, because only your face is left over on my order. From now onwards, this face will be called as Kirtimukha, the face of glory. And I will also give you a boon. And what is that boon? Like, before anybody who worships any god, they will worship you, the Kirtimukha. And by worshipping you, what do they understand? They will realize that, like, what is the importance of loyalty and submission is in bhakti. So whenever people, the devotees, come to the temple, you will be placed on the door frames, you will be placed on the entrances, you will be placed on the periphery of the murtis, on the top of the murtis, you will be placed at the base of the temples, everywhere in the temple, in every location you will be placed. And whenever a devotee is coming to the temple, as soon as they look at you, the face of glory, the Kirtimukha, they'll remember the story of you, how loyal, submissive you have been to my order. So in bhakti, loyalty and submission comes first. This is Shiva says to Kirtimukha, and then he goes away. So he says, without worshipping Kirtimukha, if anybody worships any god, it means their prayers are not answered. Why? They are worshipping the god without a loyalty and submission. And without a loyalty and submission, there is no prayer. That is what Shiva says. And now this Kirtimukha, wherever you go, from now onwards, maybe our listeners will realize and they will look at it, that ferocious face from which something is going inside its mouth, or something is coming out of its mouth, and they will see a kind of ferocious lion face, that is called Kirtimukha. It will be seen everywhere in the temple. It is because we do not know, we have not paid attention, but now I have said it. Okay, the next time they are visiting the temple, please pay attention to Kirtimukha. When you see it, the first thing that you have to remember is the story of Jalandhara and the story of that lion Simha, which Shiva has created, which is the symbol of loyalty and submission. The Kirtimukha is the symbol of loyalty and submission in the temple. So we have to look at Kirtimukha, bring that loyalty and submission in us, and then pray to the God. Then our prayers are complete. So now you all must have understood how wrongly we have been going to the temple and worshipping the gods all these days without searching for a Kirtimukha and bringing that loyalty and submission in ourselves before praying to the gods.
Two lessons.
So true.
One is about this Kirtimukha, and second one is about the Dhwajasthambam. Such important lessons. Never knew, really. It's been fascinating.
Is the Kirtimukha different from the Yali? That's another question.
Yes, Kirtimukha is always only the face.
Okay.
When it comes to Yali is full structure. You see a full body of the Yali. So Kirtimukha, for example, let us say we have this periphery frame for example, let us say Venkateshwara Swami. So you have this, I'm forgetting that terminology. There is a terminology for the frame which is there. I always say, so in that frame also, in the center on the top, you see a lion face. In the entrances also of the temple also, you see a lion.
Yes.
Okay. That is the Kirtimukha.
That it looks like a design, but it is not a design. It is Kirtimukha.
Okay.
It is often on the arch. Is that what you're talking about? There's an arch.
Exactly. It is often on the arch. It is often on the frame, the photo frame that or the golden frame that we have in the murtis.
Correct. Okay.
Yeah.
So that is what is Kirtimukha, and it has got a great role. So we do not talk about Kirtimukha, then we are not talking about anything else in the temple, because the first important element of bhakti is loyalty and submission, and that is reminded by us by Kirtimukha.
So basically, you're saying the Kirtimukha and the Yali are the same thing. The Yali is the full representation, whereas Kirtimukha is only the... No. Okay.
Yali is different and Kirtimukha is different. Now coming to
they are
Yali,
not from the same story. They are not even from the same story.
Not even from the same story.
Oh, I see. Okay.
The Yali is a Vedic concept element. What is Yali? Now, Yali is an imaginary animal, or basically people say mythological animal, all that. But then it is the greatness of our ancestors and their art, how they have represented a concept in a beautiful manner. Now, Yali, first of all, let me tell you where all we can see the Yali. Especially in South India, you see Yalis on the temple pillars. That is the first and important element where you come across. You go to any Dravida temple, you find Yali. Even in the North Indian temples also, you find a Yali, but then the Yalis of South Indian temples are very huge, humongous, and magnificent. So, and they are very prominently visible. Now, these Yalis are made of 4 animals. What are those 4 animals these Yalis are made of? They are made of Aja, Gaja, Ashwa, and Simha. I repeat, they are made of Aja, Gaja, Ashwa, and Simha. 4 animals. The combination of 4 animals, in the sense they are made of ram, the male sheep, and then they are made of elephant and horse and lion. So you will see a face, a trunk of an elephant, the face of a lion, body of a lion, and then the feet or something like a horse, and then the mane looking like a lion. So the four animals combination. Now you may be asking, what is the speciality of these four animals? These four animals represents the Vedic concept. What is that? The four Purusharthas, the Chatur Purusharthas. And what are the Chatur Purusharthas? Dharma, Artha, Kama, and Moksha. Now Yali is the representation of Dharma, Artha, Kama, Moksha. How? So the first is Dharma. And which animal represents the Dharma? Aja, or the male sheep represents Aja. And how Aja is very blindfolded. If it is, when you must have seen when two rams are fighting, when two male sheep are fighting, they are very blind. They keep fighting each other in a blind manner. They do not see what is there before them. They just keep hitting. So it means it gives Yali gives information here. The Aja gives information here to us that blindfoldedly you have to follow Dharma. And the second is Gaja, Ardha. So like the size of Gaja, you have to make wealth, money. That solves most of your problems. Next comes Kama. Kama is related to swiftness, like Ashwa. And the last is the lion, Moksha. In Indian iconography, whether it is Jainism, Buddhism, or Hinduism, the lion is always represented for Moksha. For example, the nirvana of Buddha, the enlightenment of the Tirthankaras. So lion has got a lot of this iconographical representation or moksha related representation in the Indian context. So that is the lion. So basically the Yali is represent, or Vyala, sometimes it is also called Vyala or Yali, is a representation of the Purusharthas, Dharma, Artha, Kama, and Moksha, wherein the four animals are seen, or Yali is a combination of four animals.
Extraordinary. Seriously, I think I will go to a temple the next time with a completely new perspective, really.
Yeah, I was also thinking the same, that a temple visit is never going to be the same again. Now once you understand the purpose, there is so much going on there, and we just need to learn to be receptive to everything. And then it is, an absolutely life-changing experience, actually. But yeah, there's more. What about the order of things we need to do in a temple? Do we go to the Garbhagriha directly? Do we ring the bell when we come out? Do we do a pradakshina after, paying respects to the deity in the Garbhagriha? What is the order of things that are typically done?
The order of the things that we do in temple, basically, there is no hard and fast rule, first of all, because there are two ways of doing it. Either from inside to outside you can do, or from outside to inside you can do. Whichever way you do, it is up to the devotee, how he does. But then I always prefer to do it from outside to inside. Outside to inside in the sense, you start looking at the elements in the periphery of the temple slowly. And then from the Parivara Devatas, you get into Pradakshina, the Pradakshina Devatas. And then after Pradakshina Devatas, you can look at the elements like Dhvajasthambam. You can look at the elements like Balipitam. You can look at the elements that are there in the Mandapa pillars. And then you can look at the murtis which are there in Mandapas, like Utsava Murti, kind of Bali Murti, wherein these are all Chala Murtis. The Mula Virat, who is there in the temple, is called as Achala Murti. He will not be moved. He cannot be moved. Only the representation of the chief deity, Mula Virat, are present outside the Garbhagriha in the open Mandapas. So they are all Chalamurtis. So who will be taken for Utsava, who will be taken for Snana, who will be taken for a kind of different upacharas. So now, why do I say it has to be from outside to inside till the Garbhagriha? Anyways, we will not be entering the Garbhagriha. We will be standing outside the Garbhagriha only. The Archaka will be doing all the things for us. So when we enter the temple, you take a round around the temple, right? Starting right from the Balipitam, then coming around and then touching the Dhvajasthambam. So you start slowly developing that bhakti inside you. So you must have seen the temple, or you must have seen, especially the North Indian temples. They are in the form of a mountain. The Mukha Mandapa is small, the Mandapa is a little bigger, and then a little much bigger, and then the Shikhara will be in a very high, the top position, or at the zenith. In a sense, when you enter the temple, the bhakti in you may be less, but then as you go nearer and nearer to the Garbhagriha, the level of bhakti inside you should increase. And how does that happen? When we go from outside to inside. So going around the temple, okay, looking at the elements, okay, understanding the episodes and the outside of the walls of the Garbhagriha, like I said, Andakasura Vadhamurti. So looking at him, we will understand how Shiva has killed Andakasura and how good is winning over the evil. So you have a kind of affirmation that yes, fine. So whatever may be the condition, whatever may be the situation of mine, once I enter into the temple, yes, I am very sure that good will happen always with me. And developing that, slowly you go towards the Garbhagriha. So when you go to the Garbhagriha, there are two important activities that we come across. One is the Gantaravam in the sense ringing the bell. The other one is Arati. The word Arati comes from Aratrika. So first of all, let us look at Gantaravam. So when we are there in the temple, and this tradition again, see, when we are standing near Garbhagriha, it's like you are standing near the Yagyavedi or the Homam. So ringing the bell is like invoking the gods, or avahana of the gods. For example, we have this Ganapati Atharva Shirsha mantra, wherein we say Om Gananam Tva Ganapati Kumbhavamahe Kavim Kavina. So when you are reading the Ganapati Atharva Shirsha, like you are doing the avahana of the gods. Same way, when you are ringing the bell, so the bell may be of Panchadhatu, Saptadhatu, Ashtadhatu, whatever. But the important thing is the act of ringing the bell. So when you are ringing the bell, what are we doing is, we are invoking the gods. That is why we read the mantra while ringing the bell. We say Agamardantu Devanam, Agamardantu Devanam, in the sense we are inviting the gods. Gamanardhantu Rakshasam, we are sending away the Rakshasas. And then what of Gantaravam Karomi Adho. In a sense, I am doing the Gantaravam, the first thing. The first thing, Adho means the first important thing I am doing is Gantaravam. Why? So, Devatahvana Lakshana. So, when you are doing the Gantaravam, it is like you are invoking the gods, or you are inviting the gods, driving away all the negative forces. We have a lot of logic and science people talking about, saying that the bell has got is a Saptadhatu. When it rings, it reverberates for 7 seconds. It activates chakras, all that. Because we do not know, and we have not gone into so much detail of science and all. We need not worry about science. But the basic thing is, like when you are doing Yagya or Yagyavedi or Homam, you are invoking the gods by reading the mantras. Same way, when you are ringing the bell, it is directly or indirectly equal to reading the mantras and invoking the gods. And then after the Gantaravam is done, so you go near the Garbhagriha, and there the Archaka takes our name, etc., and he will confirm our place or existence in the universe. He will take our name, then he will be reading about where we are located, in which tithi we have gone to the temple, and what is our gotra, etc. And then he gets into the Garbhagriha, and there he lights the Agni. So when he is lighting the Agni, what is he doing is, in that dark space, when the light is lit, now you will be seeing the creator of the universe. So when the light is lit, that is the reason the Indian Garbhagrihas, the temple or the Devalayas, they are dark. They are not profusely lit. Why they are dark? Because to make us understand that is how the universe was in the beginning, all dark. And then Aratrika, it comes from, Arati comes from the word Aratrika. Aratrika, Ratri. It says now when you are lighting the Agni, the darkness that is there is gone, and the creator is being shown to us. That he is the one who has created. And how did he create? That is how from the dark he has emerged into the light. He has thrown away all the darkness and he has created this universe with abundant light. So the two important acts or activities that we have to do in the temple are the Gantaravam and Aratrika. Very important. You are not doing this, then you are not understanding, you are not invoking the god Avahana, and then you are not understanding the creator of the universe who is there in the Garbhagriha. These two are important. And after that, what you do is, once you take prasadam, okay, or you take receive panchamrutam, or okay, during the puja process of doing all the upacharas, 16 upacharas or Shodash upacharas, you do achamanam, etc. Everything you do, and you come back, and then you are always requested to sit somewhere in the temple, or you do pradakshina and then you come and sit. So while doing pradakshina also you have mantras. So you yani kanicha papani sarvani, okay, kutanicha tani sarvani vinashanti pradakshinam pade pade. So wherein you say, as I take pradakshina again and again and again and again, what happens is all the sins that I have accumulated over the years, so all of them, let them be washed. So how do they get washed? Is because whenever you are going in the pradakshina patha, and whenever you are seeing the pradakshina devatas or the devatas that are there outside the temple, so you go on touching them. So it is called a nyasa, touch. So you keep touching them and you keep feeling them. So when you are touching and feeling them, you are really understanding what do they stand for, and you will really get affirmation in your mind. Yes, they are there to me. And then you do either one pradakshina or 3 pradakshinas and 5 pradakshinas. So the odd number always stays very important and relevant in a Hindu temple. And then later on you come, you sit, and then so generally if your people are very old, then they have this mantra to read when they are sitting in the temple. Anayasena maranam vina dainyana jivitam dehante tavasavijjan dehime parameshwara. This is from again Mahabharata, Drona Sthiti. So the Drona, when he is on the Shaya, he says to Krishna, says ki, give me a very good death without much suffering and all. So all that. So my way of saying the things is going slowly from outside, Balipitam, then Dhwajasthambam, then Vahana Mandapam, then Mandapam, then going around the temple, okay, all that. And later in the last 3 things, Gantaravam, Aratrika, Pradakshina, and then Upashamanam. So you will come and sit in the temple at a place and then meditate. And this sitting in the place, because it is always advised by the people, you should, whenever you are going to a temple, you should always sit for at least 2 minutes. Why? This is a Upanishadic concept. What is that Upanishadic concept? For example, it is very clearly said, even the Isha Upanishad says, like, I am the representation, Yosa Vaso Purushas Sohamasmi. In a sense, I am the representation of whatever the elements that are there on the God. So, but how do you do that? How do you realize that God in yourself? In solitude. So when you are in temple, sit at a place in solitude and spend some time with yourself, your Atman, to realize that Yosa Vaso Purusha Sohamas means I am the God or energy that is there in the sun. And how do I realize? In solitude. So when you are sitting in the temple for 5 minutes, you are spending in solitude the time with your own Atman. This is a very, verily the Upanishadic or Advaitic concept that is okay, propagated and said much and much again and again by Jagadguru Adi Shankaracharya. So he says, so this is the way we can okay, complete a temple visit.
Beautiful. I like the part where you said the last part where you sit down. It's a very introspective process, and
Yes.
that is the beginning of I think, deep thought.
Transformation. That is the beginning of human transformation. Yes.
So the last thing that I'd like to get in for today's episode is if Ramakrishna Garu has any message for the parents and children listening today.
Yeah. So the message I have is, or generally, basically, I also do myself, Like wherever you are, in whichever city you are, especially if you are in India, please Google, get into internet and Google the ancient temples which are at least 1,000 years old nearby you. And if they are in the radius of some 50-100 kilometers, make sure that every Saturday or Sunday, at least once in a month, or maybe once in a trimester, you please do go visit, click the photographs with your kids, come back home, open those photographs and look at them, and try to understand the elements that are there in the temple. Because the temples are built for a reason in the society. They are the upkeepers of dharma. When a temple is there, one temple, surviving temple, can keep up dharma in that whole region. So if you are going to that temple and you are liking that temple, you have documented the temple, please share about that temple in the social media, talk about it plentifully, so that your near and dear ones start keep asking you questions about the temple that you have visited. And especially whenever you are visiting, you please take your kids with you, and try to explain some basic concepts that we have discussed in this podcast. You need not be a great photographer, you need not have a great knowledge about the temple. The only one thing is you have to have that inquisitiveness to ask a question why. For example, if you're going to a temple, there is a door frame, there are a lot of elements in the door frame. You just ask, what are these elements, what do they mean? And then you will get the answer.
So I think, Ramakrishna Garu, this podcast, I'm hoping, should raise a lot of questions in the minds of our listeners, and I think we will have to come to you for a second round, because there are a lot more questions that lots of people have regarding temples. We are so far removed from our own culture and heritage and our ways of worshipping. So I think this will sort of plant the seed for a lot more questions to come in. And so we will look forward to doing another episode with you. And there, in fact, I'm hoping that we will get a lot more listener questions, and we will attempt to collect all of them and put them to you and, get answers to them. This has been one fascinating conversation, and we wish to keep it going. So thank you very much for your time. It has been an absolutely enlightening episode, and as I said before also, I don't think a temple visit is going to be the same again, going forward for us. So thank you so much, and
Thank you.
we look forward to having you very soon back with us. Thank you so much.
So we'll try to have some pictures put up on our Substack with labeling about the elements of a temple, and maybe those of you who are listening on other platforms like Spotify can go to the Substack, where we will put up a few pictures so that the elements of a temple are clearly visible and understood.
So with that, we request our listeners to subscribe to us at hinduparenting.substack.com. We are also present on all social media, and everywhere we go with the handle Hindu Parenting. So please do follow us on various social media. And all our podcasts are available on podcast platforms like Spotify, Google Podcast, Apple Podcasts. So please catch us wherever you're comfortable listening to podcasts. And
on YouTube.
Yeah, and we are also present on YouTube. So please do catch us wherever it suits you. But for this particular episode, perhaps we request that you also visit our Substack account, because we will be putting up this informative pictures. So that might help you all to understand a little better what we discussed during this podcast. So until the next time, namaste, be well.